been asked to have a look at this windowsill because it's blowing in the corner. You can see there. Now, obviously there's a leak outside, but this is not actually wood. This is MDF, and basically you can see there, I've scraped it off just to double check what it is, and it's MDF, and it's absolutely useless. Why they bother pouring it in properties is just beyond me. If you get the littlest leak, that's what happens. So, you know, if that was solid wood, the paint might bubble a bit, you might get a bit of a water ring, but no way would you get it actually lifting up and delaminating, because that's what's happening now. You can see it there at the back, how much it's raised up. Now, she has asked me to cut it out and fill it, but that's just no good, because if the leak happens again, or we don't solve the leak on the outside, then the rest of it's just going to start going. So basically what I'm going to do is take the windowsill out and put a new windowsill in. That's the windowsill out now. I mean, what I've done is peeled the paper back, so when all the plastering's done, it can all be stuck back nice and neatly. I've cut it nice and neat. You know, cut up the corner, so when everything goes back and it's polyfilled and emulsioned, you won't see anything. So on taking the sill out, what I've discovered is how all that brick there is absolutely saturated. If you look, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but underneath this edge here, I can see daylight. Just there, I think. Yeah, there. So you can just see there the leak, well, where it's been leaking. It's not actually stuck. So I'm going to seal that now. So driving rain, it's probably been coming in. So what I'll do is I'll seal it from this side, and I'll probably use some expanding foam. And then when I put this new sill in, I'll actually make sure the back of it's waterproof, so it won't soak into the wooden sill and up any plaster. I'll just show you the MDF sill. That's it, that's both corners, that, because I've split it in half to get it out. Look at the state. Now if that had been a wooden sill, we could have fixed the leak from the outside, it would have dried out, and we could have just painted the sill. But with it being MDF, you can see the difference. That's where it should be like, and that's what happens when water gets into it. And it's useless, it's absolutely ruined. There's nothing you can do with it at all. You can see all the damp all the way up through the layers. Ruined. That's the foam in now. So what I'm going to do is let that go off. I've already give the brick, the breeze block, a coat of PVA to seal it from any dust. Because when I was taking the sill out, the first layer came off. So what I'm going to do now is get some fast drying cement and relay these breeze blocks, and then when that's gone off, I'm going to fit my windowsill, but I'm going to use liquid no nails to stick it to the blocks instead of putting nails in. So that's the piece of wood in now. It's not done too bad, that. Bit of filling to do around the bottom, and when this paper gets stuck back, a bit more filler around. And And it should be alright that, once it's emulsioned, you won't be able to tell it's been done. What I've done is I've put some masking tape on the paper to hold it back and put a bit of tape wherever I'm going to get some foam in down the side. Again, masking tape, keep the paper back, and I've put some plastic sheet on to fill the edge underneath. You know, that'll catch any rubbish, bit of newspaper on the floor. I've got some PVA, thinned PVA there, small brush. I'm going to wet in the plaster around and put some foam in. To cut this foam back now, so take your time and make sure you cut it back beyond the plaster so you've got enough space to put some filler in. I'm about to seal the knots on this wood, and I'm going to use bin primer to seal the knots, and then I'm going to give it a full coat of bin primer, and then I'm going to get some 2-pack filler and fill any holes that are in the wood. Before I do all that, on the sharp edges I'm just making them more curved, because paint doesn't like to stick to sharp edges. You're better off just curving them a bit with your sandpaper. Taking your bin primer, and you don't want to mess about with this stuff. You literally just want to give your knots a quick coat and move on to the next one. If you play about with this stuff too much, you leave brush marks in it. So you're better getting it on and just leaving it. Don't go back to it. So leave that now for about 20 minutes, and then you can put a full coat on the sill. Leave it for another 20 minutes, and then you can put your plaster on. And then I'm going to leave that then till tomorrow. So that's the second coat of primer on there now. And what I'm going to fill the knot holes with is this wood filler. This is light oak, but it's all I've got left, and because this is getting painted anyway, it doesn't matter. You know, you're better off using white if you're just buying some to do a project like this, but because I've been using this, I'm going to use it on this because I'm going to paint it white. In the end, I decided to use my undercoat plaster because it was a bit fiddly to get it filled in one. So I thought it'd be better to put my undercoat plaster on and then clean that up and just put a light bit of polyfiller over the top. So I'll show you that when it's cleaned up. When you're working on jobs, sometimes you change the way you're actually doing things, because there's different ways you can achieve the same thing. Now with this one, I've got to stick the paper back, and I've also got to put some extra filler on, and there's all the joints to fill in the paper when the paper's actually stuck back. So in some circumstances, what I do is I wet in the paper and I wet in the wall, and I actually put my powder filler on the wall, and then I stick the paper straight onto the powder filler, and that allows you then to fill all the edges and to finish it literally in one, which I'll show you that process now. So I'll just take this tape off. I mean, doing something like this is just not easy. You know, you're fiddling about with messed up edges and trying to get everything to look neat. So I'll wet it in. And once you've wet it in, leave it for 5 minutes. So the paper becomes malleable. There's no point in trying to stick it back while the paper's stiff. The water will soak in and make it a bit more pliable. I mean, in circumstances like this, the only option is to strip all the paper off and redo it. But if you can get away with just doing this, it's not too bad. So it's a better option to try this first. So I'm going to leave that for 10 minutes soaking now. So the paper has had a good soak now, and I'm ready to put my filler on. So again, it's not easy at all, but apply a layer of filler. Now you'd be amazed how good this acts like an adhesive. But filling something like that, it's not easy, so sometimes, you know, you're better off using a spatula. And if you've not got a spatula, you can use a screwdriver. And again, don't worry about it being too rough, because when you actually put the paper down into place, you can smooth it all out with a damp cloth and your finger. If it ever gets stripped, it's easy enough just to scrape back and fix it proper. But I find this is the easiest way to stick the paper back and fill all the cracks sometimes, especially with awkward papers and awkward holes, you know. Obviously speeds up the job as well, because I don't have to wait for the filler to dry fully. And that's not too bad at all, that. Just make sure there's some up that edge there. And once you've got it to that stage, taking your damp cloth, just slowly push the paper into place. You can see there's bits missing there, but again, once it's emulsioned, you won't see it. Now, I think some paper going to have to be trimmed off there, whereas that's not a problem. So, using a nice sharp blade, you just can trim the paper there. And again, because we're actually emulsioning this, it's going to hide a lot of what I'm actually doing now. too bad. And what the filler allows you to do is fill all the cracks, smooth it off. And what I'll do is put a little bit more on that side there. And sometimes you can even add a little bit of texture in with a cloth. So once it's actually emulsioned, you can't even see that there's some filler being put on. It's not easy. If you take your time, you can get it looking not too bad. So now there, I've just got that bottom edge to fill. Not too bad at all, that. Basically that's how you do it. That's both sides filled now, and on the underneath as well. It's not perfect, but once it's emulsioned, you won't see it. All the filler is dried now, and it's looking pretty good already. So what I'm going to do now is give it all a sand down. Just wipe over where I put the polyfiller on with a damp cloth, take any sharp edges off, sand the wood down. Then I'm going to put the 2-pack filler in any holes or the knots. Then watered down PVA, or diluted PVA, and just run it over where your filler is. And then I'm going to give it a coat of emulsion. Once you've dusted it off, using some diluted PVA, just go over the paper and the filler, what you've put on. And once you've done that, wipe back any excess liquid, let it dry, and then you can put your two-part filler on. But it does go off very quick. So I'm only going to use a bit. That's plenty, that is. And then mix it up. Now, you're better using white if you can for this, but because it's getting painted, it doesn't matter too much, and this is all I've got left, so I'm going to use this. And then fill all the holes on your sill. I mean, it's good stuff, this. You might get them all filled in one. Like, what you might find is when you put another coat of undercoat on, you might find a little bit what you've missed. So you might have to put two layers of filler on, a light sand in between. And you don't want to leave loads of excess filler everywhere because it makes it harder to sand it down. That's the first coat of emulsion on. It's looking pretty good. You know, you're never going to get it perfect, but you've just removed a sill and replaced a sill with an anaglypta on the wall. So once that sill's finished, it's going to look good. That's the silk emulsion dry, and the 2-part filler is dry. So I'm going to give the sill a sand down now using this P240 fine sandpaper. And when I give it a sand down, I'm going to give it a coat of bin primer, then a coat of acrylic primer, and then a coat of gloss. All finished. That's just had its final coat of gloss, so it's still drying, and it looks really good. You wouldn't even think the sill's been replaced, and the customer's happy. So on to the next job.